Shiviti, Shiviti, Shiviti Adonai, lenegdi tamid. Shiviti, Shiviti, Shiviti Adonai, lenegdi tamid. I've set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me in death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Adonai ma adam v'tedaehu ben enosh v'techashvehu. God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you're mindful of us? We're like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, "Return, O mortal creatures." Would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going, for when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Death has taken Michael Stein. His friends and family and loved ones grieve in their darkened world. And in both their words and their silence, there's lamentation. There's a loneliness in their tears. Both alone and together in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends and family to be of comfort. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Michael's love and laughter that united in life and which death can't sever, for his companionship that was shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and certainly of his mind that brought joy and happiness and also inspiration and are now a precious remembrance. For all of these and more, we give thanks. You have the words of the 23rd Psalm in your handout. Please join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. How much Michael saw God as his shepherd, difficult to say. But certainly these words from Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, ring true that there was a time for everything in life. There was a time to be forceful and direct as a physician. There was a time to embrace and be loving and to laugh loud enough that it might embarrass your children, to cry at the drop of a hat. There was a time to be perfectly dressed and a time to wear tracksuits, the tops which may or may not have matched the bottoms. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what's been planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. There's a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard. There's a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. In the spirit of no nonsense and being directly to the point, some of Michael's family are going to come forward and share some words, share some thoughts. We're going to hear from his sister Audrey, his niece Rachel, his brother-in-law David, and his sons Ben and Steve.
I am Audrey Steingolding's Michael's little sister, and I title this Hineni. I said I am Audrey Steingolding's Michael's youngest sister, and I wanted to discuss with you. Do you all hear me? Okay. By now you've probably figured out I'm Michael's younger sister, Audrey Stein Goldings, and I title this Hineni. I want to relate this morning 3 Hineni moments I experienced that to me define Michael as a big brother. Hineni appears in the Torah 8 times. It's a contraction of the Hebrew words hear, sometimes translated as behold, and the word I. Simply put, here I am. It means to, in common language, to step up to the plate, to declare who you are and what's important to you in life. And Michael did that many times. I'm going to give you 3 examples. It tells your values, how you spend your time, how you spend your money, and what risk you're willing to take on. And so these are just 3 examples that impacted me, and many in this room can probably testify to the character of my brother. First, my husband tragically needed brain surgery for malignant brain tumor when my children were very small. In fact, one of the children I had just given birth, and so it was in a week after I had given birth. Michael flew to Dallas, where I lived at the time, and he was with me every moment during the surgery, and stayed for a short while after. It was not a question in his mind. He wanted to, take care of his little sister, and I am eternally grateful for having him with me during that very difficult moment in my life. Hineni, here I am, no problem, right? He was there for me. The second is his guidance towards a career choice. He was 9 years older than mine, and at that time, women were just starting to go to medical school in greater numbers, and now women are a little bit more than half of graduating medical school classes. Michael took me on rounds with him in the hospital, right in Des Moines General, right here in town. I'm quite familiar with Des Moines, and I love this town because of some of Michael's devotion to it, and the community you have is just wonderful. So in any event, he took me on rounds in the hospital where his enthusiasm and dedication led me to follow in his footsteps. I always felt, I can't believe they're paying me to do what I love. And I got that from Michael. It was contagious. The third example, I remember having discussions with him about my experience with being part of the screening committee for the Jewish Film Festival in Santa Fe. And I would talk about how rewarding this is. And Michael ended up creating the Simon Michael Stein Film Festival in Des Moines, which I hope you've had an opportunity to share in. He was always careful to give Simma's name first, the Simma Stein and Michael Stein Jewish, what's the Des Moines Film Festival? Is that the official name? Okay. This project startup is a commitment to the values that they live by. He put his money where his mouth is. As a brother, he led by example. I'm sure during the decades, most of you who lived in Des Moines during that time period can relate to these Hineni moments. Here I am, and as I say, that was my brother. He just lived his values. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I'm David Adler, and I am 5.5 years older than Simma. This will be a bit of levity, I guess, if you need it. Michael met my sister Simma around the corner in East New York, Brooklyn. Simma's first words to Michael, "I like you. You're fat like my brother." And that was me. When Michael was a little older and still living on Milford Avenue, Artie Meltzer, who was about 5 years older, ran errands for Benjamin Stein, a local pharmacist, and Michael's dad. One day, Artie was babysitting Michael. They were playing, running up and down a steep banister inside the Stein house. Artie gave Michael a hefty push, counting on Michael's being able to grasp the banister. Unfortunately, Michael tumbled all the way down. He wore the result of that damage to his back and spine for the rest of his life. A few years later, the family moved to Elmont, Long Island. During Michael's life on the island, despite his damaged body, he became an excellent swimmer. In fact, later in his life as a father, his children, Steve, Benjamin, and Laura, became expert swimmers. Simma, let's say, became a swimming voyeur. Over the years, Artie Meltzer remained a friend of the family.
David, at the risk of stepping on ceremony, we are going to get the microphone working. What you're saying should be heard. So we're going to take just a moment.
It's all right. I talk to myself very often.
Who wins those conversations?
Nobody usually listens to me anyway, especially my students.
Hello? Yes, it works now? Okay. So you really need to get up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Should I start from the beginning? Okay. Okay. Okay, Michael, well, that's me, met my sister Summer around the corner in East New York, Brooklyn. Simmer's first words to Michael, "I like you. You're fat like my brother." And that was me. When Michael was a little older and still living on Milford Avenue, Artie Meltzer, who was about 5 years older, ran errands for Benjamin Stein, a local pharmacist and Michael's dad. One day, Artie was babysitting Michael. They were playing, running up and down a steep banister inside the Stein house. Artie gave Michael a hefty push, counting on Michael's being able to grasp the banister. Unfortunately, Michael tumbled all the way down. He wore the result of the damage to his back and spine for the rest of his life. A few years later, the family moved to Elmont, Long Island. During Michael's life on the island, despite his damaged body, he became an excellent swimmer. In fact, later in his life as a father, his children Steve and Benjamin and Laura became expert swimmers as well. Simmer, let's say, became a swimmer, a swimming voyeur. Over the years, Artie Meltzer remained a friend of the family. His experiences working for Michael's father and then for another druggist close by in East New York led to a success in a business as a young man. It was at his wedding that Simmer and Michael met again. Shortly after, Michael asked Simmer for a date. The date turned out well, except for a car accident, resulting in damage to Simmer's ankle. Nonetheless, that evening marked the beginning of their lifetime relationship. Over the years, their bond became stronger. They were married in Smithtown, Long Island in 1964. Now, somebody said the other day it was 63. I think it was 64. But before Michael and Simmer became parents, some of their friends and my wife Carol and I vacationed for a few days in the Catskill Mountains. It was on a cool, late summer day that Michael was watching Carol, my first wife, deceased, who was a very polished ice skater. He watched her skate around the rink. Michael wanted to give it a try. Here's my other side. There we go. Carol helped him put on ice skates. Yeah, she held his hand and began to skate and pull Michael along. When she left him on his own, he began to fall forward with his arms stretched right and left, making circles. He straightened up as best he could and then leaned back and started to circle his arms backwards. It was certain that he would fall, but he didn't. Instead, his ride lasted until he was able to grab hold of a bar surrounding the rink. He never fell. Years later, my wife Carol and I were living in Smithtown, Long Island. I was teaching at a college nearby. Rachel, our only child, sitting there, was about 9 or 10 years old. We decided that it would be nice to build an in-ground pool. So Carol and I, two of my students on summer vacation, and the older son of a neighbor who had experience in digging pools, took on the job. We were concerned, however, that Rachel and her friends could be injured by our working with heavy equipment, including a large backhoe to dig a 36-foot by 18-foot by 18 feet deep hole. Simmer and Michael were delighted when we asked if we could send Rachel to their home for about a week and a half vacation, complete with a swimming pool. When Rachel returned, she immediately put on a bathing suit, jumped into our own new pool, We were astonished at how many laps she swam. We lost count. Neither Carol nor I could match her. Not much later, we were not surprised to learn that Stephen, Laura, and Benjamin were all outstanding swimmers. I wanted to, but I just didn't have time to, but I'll mention it now. I left out what wonderful dancers they were. And this is Michael with his back and his shoulder. He was an unbelievable dancer. Now, my sister, as a kid, didn't show a talent for it, but together, they were magnificent. We'll miss them. We'll miss them both. Thank you.
So the story of my relationship with my Uncle Michael, and I'm Rachel, Michael's niece. Aunt Sim that was my dad who just was up here. The story of my relationship with my Uncle Michael is a story about connection and bonding. So he was my uncle, so of course I loved him. But I felt very close to him because of certain bonding points. And they happened at different stages of my life, and so they were enduring and they were exponential. So the first one, and my dad just alluded to this, was swimming. So I had a near drowning experience when I was a kid, and I was afraid of the water. And when I was 10, my parents sent me to Iowa, as my dad said, to see my Uncle Michael, the swimmer. So I took lessons at the country club, and I was very frightened, and I almost quit. But at the encouragement of both Aunt Sima and Uncle Michael, I finished the class, and I passed the final swim test. Uncle Michael knew that this was not easy for me, and he truly respected perseverance. And this was my first Uncle Michael bonding point. The second is that Uncle Michael was a Vietnam veteran, and my fiance at the time was a Marine reservist. And we lived in Phoenix all alone. We both attended grad school at Arizona State, and my fiance's unit was activated during Desert Storm, and he was sent to Bahrain for months, leaving me alone in Phoenix. Uncle Michael came to town for a medical conference to Phoenix, and he took me to dinner in the evenings, and he told me all about his experiences in the Army and how hard it was for him to be away from Aunt Sima. He truly understood what I was going through, and that was another bond. Uncle Michael was a physician, and it was a huge part of his identity. In 2007, when I made the decision to become a nurse, when I was already a professor of anthropology, a lot of people thought I was crazy, but not Uncle Michael. He was both inquisitive and supportive. When I finally became an RN and later a psychiatric nurse practitioner, Uncle Michael made it clear that he was proud of me and that we shared something special. We both cared for patients, and that was another bond. Uncle Michael was a cancer survivor. He endured bladder cancer, and it was difficult. He had an ostomy, and it made doing the things he loved to do, like swimming, a challenge. My mother had a second bout of cancer, and she and Uncle Michael became cancer buddies. And then Aunt Sima got cancer, so there was a lot of cancer-related angst in Uncle Michael's life. So later, after my mom passed away, when I made the decision to pursue psycho-oncology, research, and clinical practice, Uncle Michael was extremely interested. Every time I saw him in Palm Springs, he would ask me about my research. All of it was designed to find ways to help people psychologically cope with cancer, and that was another bond that we shared. So last but not least, Uncle Michael was a golfer, and he was an excellent golfer. About 10 years ago, on a whim, I picked up golf. Uncle Michael and Aunt Sima lived in Golfer's Paradise, Palm Springs, half of the year. And whenever we visited, my husband Dave and I played golf with him. First, we played with him and Aunt Sima, and when Aunt Sima passed away, we played with him and Ben. Uncle Michael loved golf, and he made it clear that he thoroughly enjoyed playing with us. His sense of humor was always evident. I have an extremely high handicap, which means I'm very terrible at golf. He would watch me and tease me that I was getting my money's worth with all the shots that I was taking. Golf was a part of life for Uncle Michael, and the fact that I became a fellow golf nut connected us even further right up into the end. These bonds give me memories that I will treasure always. May Uncle Michael's memory be a blessing to all who had the pleasure to connect and bond with him. Amen.
I'm taking a moment. I realized that when my mother passed and we were here almost 3 years ago in a few weeks, there were so many people I didn't see. And I'm looking around and I'm just so overwhelmed and so blessed, and I just cannot thank you all enough for being here. If you never knew my dad, but only knew of him through me and my family, you have a small glimpse of the beautiful man that my dad was. And for those who really knew him, there's nothing that I can say that you don't already know. But especially if you were a patient of my dad's. If you were a patient of my father's, I would suspect you might even know a little more. My dad used to say that the best way to diagnose a patient was to listen. And the more they shared, the easier it was for my dad to have an idea of their neurological condition and how to best treat them. My dad saved lives, and the advice he gave his patients would often save their lives beyond even medicine. This is evident from the many cherished gifts my dad received from his patients through the years. However, my favorite story was from a woman who named her dog after my dad, a German Shepherd whose name was Dr. Michael J. Stein. In the days before my mom passed, we had every opportunity to share the things we needed and wanted to say to one another. Among them, I promised my mom that when she passed, I would do my best to take care of my dad. And she said to me, "Just don't ever live with them." I'm sure she was saying it in part for my benefit, but was also for my dad's. Funny but true, and this is not so much because my dad and I are so different, but because we are very much alike. I need to put on my spectacles. After we had my mom's funeral nearly 3 years ago, despite what my mom had said, I all but moved in with my dad when we returned to California. It wasn't easy at first. My room was next to him. And most nights for months, I could hear my dad crying, calling out my mother's name, and asking why. This wasn't how they planned it. My father was never in great health, and it was always assumed he would go first. It wasn't until I finished the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, just about a month ago, that I was able to remind my dad, who had read the book as part of Mike's Sunday morning class, and I reminded my dad about a passage about a doctor whose wife had passed after many years of marriage. Suffering with depression, he went to see Viktor Frankl, who explained that if the doctor had not outlived his wife, it would be his wife who would now be suffering, and not her husband. That the last great act of love for my mom was my dad's sacrifice so she wouldn't have to suffer. And at this, my dad looked at me and went, I don't know. Maybe. If the last 3 years were the hardest of my life, they most certainly were for my dad. However, again, to reference Man's Search for Meaning, it's the attitude we have that during times of unavoidable suffering that matters most. It would be easy to think that without my mom, my dad gave up. My dad never quit. And as difficult as it was to see, my dad was truly grateful for these last few years, even without my mom. There are so many great memories that I have of my dad through the years, despite the darkness of the last 3. And there is so much that we are both so incredibly thankful for. Within a few months of my mom's passing, as a tribute to my mom's love of the arts and Judaism, my dad had the idea for the Sima and Michael Stein Jewish film series to broaden Judaism through cinema in Des Moines. Now that my dad is no longer with us, this series will take on an even more significant meaning to my family and the community, as it is their gift and legacy. In the last 3 years, my dad had the opportunity to be at Nola's bat mitzvah and to see her skate. He had the opportunity to watch Judah sing and swim. He had the opportunity to just be with family. And while most families have some level of dysfunction, including ours, I cannot be more appreciative that whether it was in times of sorrow, that my extended family made the effort to be with us time and again. And while I don't say it enough, I am so incredibly grateful for my family's support and presence these last few years. At the most difficult times in our lives, we came together to support my dad, and I believe he knew that we were doing this for him because of our love for my dad. Among my favorite pictures of my dad and me was one taken a couple years before my mom passed. We were in California visiting my parents. We had gone to the pool, and before heading home, we had to stop at Walgreens. It didn't occur to either of us, my father or I, and it didn't matter, that when the picture was taken, we were both wearing our bathrobes. Not only am I my father's son, but it just made sense to both of us. But as much as anything was his smile in that picture. We knew that in time my mom would no longer be with us, but at that moment we had time and we had each other. It was a smile like I would come to know less and less until he finally went to be with my mom on Thursday. Fast forward to just a few months ago, when a friend of mine who plays in the Des Moines Symphony asked if I wanted tickets for a Saturday night performance. For many years, my parents had had season tickets to the Des Moines Symphony, and as my mom had been diagnosed with cancer in 2017, it had been many years since my dad was able to go. I asked my dad to join me and took my father to performance of Sibelius's Symphony No. 5. Now, I can say the name of the symphony like my mom as if I know what I'm talking about. But until that night, I had never heard of Sibelius. And while I can't speak for my dad, I'm assuming the same for him. That night, I went to my dad's apartment at Edgewater to pick him up at 5. Knowing how long it would take my dad to get ready to be at the performance by 7. And as this was only a few months ago, the routine wasn't much different than it was just this past Wednesday when I took him for an oncology appointment. My father was a very proud man, and to have to ask any of the nurses for help wasn't easy. So as often as I could, I helped my dad get dressed. I helped my dad get dressed. From the socks I put on his feet, to helping him with his winter jacket that he could no longer zip up, as his hands were often trembling. And while it would have been easiest to use a wheelchair, my dad, a very proud man, used his walker instead. Though my dad could only go a few paces before he had to stop and catch his breath, we made it to the car, where I helped my dad in, put his walker in the back seat, and then helped my dad with his seatbelt as he could no longer buckle it himself. When we got to the Civic Center, I went to the ticket booth, and given my dad's condition, they switched our seats to the front. By the time we made it to our seats, the performance was only minutes from starting, and as the lights began to dim, my dad started crying and told me how much he loved being there, and that it reminded him, like most things, of my mom. He turned to me, and then he said, "Your mother would be so proud of you." This certainly wasn't the first time I heard my dad say this, but among the many beautiful memories of the times I've shared with my dad, I know this moment meant as much for him as it did for me. I share this story because in the last years of my dad's life, my dad was suffering from a body that was no longer functioning as it once had. And even more so was the suffering he felt from the depression he carried after losing my mom. Even so, in the incredible darkness of the last 3 years, my father and I shared some of the most special and beautiful moments of our lives together. As difficult as it has been to care for the parents who once cared for me, it will forever be one of the greatest blessings of my life to have been there. With that, I am incredibly grateful for the time I was able to spend with them these last few years. I'll miss them more than they'll know. While my father's presence will be greatly missed, I am so glad and so happy that he's dancing with my mother again. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm sorry, I'm just taking that one last look. And I know that there are people online, there are just, thank you.
Does the video, can I control it? No, but can I control it? Would I be able to control it? Or do I just look at you and go, okay. Okay, but it's not that simple, because you have to kind of navigate to it. So, oh. Okay. Can you, okay. Ben, how am I supposed to follow that? So I'm Steve. I also want to thank you for being here. I didn't expect this many people. My dad's world was increasingly getting smaller and smaller, and I forgot how. I didn't really forget how big he was, but it's nice to see that my dad was big. Okay. Last night, the rabbi came over to the house to meet us for the first time. I've never met Rabbi Schuster, but it turns out that he's great. He was kind and warm, and this was not his first rodeo. We sat in a circle and talked about my father. It was good. It bordered on intervention, but it was good. And it reminded me of things, confirmed things. Also, I learned things. And before leaving, the rabbi said that when it comes to the eulogy, we shouldn't try to say it all. So you should thank him because this was much, much longer. I have 5 words: flannel, butch, thesis, birds, and conclusion. Flannel. I was going to wear all black today because it's slimming. But I called an audible this morning after a terrible night's sleep. I decided to wear my flannel shirt for 3 reasons. I forget the first one, but the second is because my dad would have wanted me to dress warm. And the third is because I wanted to signal that I'm not interested in mourning. I've been mourning for years. I know I'm not supposed to say these things. These last few years for my dad have been brutal. When my mom died, so did a huge chunk of my dad. She was everything to him, the absolute love of his life. And with his failing health and severe depression, it was awful. Now, I'm not saying we need to get a band and put up streamers, but I want this to be a celebration of my dad's life. So that's why I'm wearing flannel. Butch. My father called me Butch. He always called me Butch. I don't know where it came from or how it came to be, and to a certain extent, I don't care. I love that he called me Butch. It was special. No one else had that nickname. It was mine. All mine. And whenever he called me Butch, it was good because I wasn't in trouble. When he said Stephen, that was a whole other story. And it eventually came to be that I called my dad Pop. I'm not sure how or when that happened. It might have been because when I became a dad, I needed to differentiate my dad from me, from my kids. But I started calling him Pop, and it stuck, and I called him Pop. Thesis. My thesis is, click on family films. Oh, sorry, do you want me to do this, or? And then click on vacations. And then click on Poseidon Adventure 2. And then scroll down to the bottom one, which is Last Boat, and then hold. And that's the one we're going to play. My thesis is that my dad loved life and didn't want it to end. That's why he was so crushed when my mother That's why he was so crushed when my mother passed. And whenever I came for a visit, my dad cried when I left. Full tears, shaking body, the whole thing, every time. And it was as if we would never see each other again. My dad loved life and didn't want it to end. And I have a video to support my thesis. And I'm going to play it for you now in a second. It's a family vacation. And it has everything. It has adventure. It has excitement. It has humor. There's golf. It has goats. And it has this shot at the end where we're coming back to port because we're the last boat in. And my dad starts to cry. He starts to cry. And he's crying because he doesn't want it to end. Um, that was perfect. It sounded good. And then, of course, now that I see it with all of you, I realize maybe it was a little long. But that had everything. That had everything of my dad. Don't let the last few years of my dad's life fool you. He had a great life. My mom can't swim, and he got her out on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And he's surrounded by the family that he loves. He loved life, and he did not want it to end. Which brings me to birds. As my brother and I have been racing around, shuttling friends and family, and getting things in place for this funeral, I keep seeing birds. Not like a horror movie, but more like a nature documentary. I see flocks of them flying in V's across the sky, and because right now everything reminds me of my dad, the birds make me think of my dad. They make me think of my dad because he's free. He's unburdened with doctor appointments and bills and feedings. He's unencumbered from patches, pills, and ports. He is untethered from this mortal coil, and he's free. He's not in pain. He's not sad. He's free. And if I understand death correctly, he is with my mom. And they are dancing, and they are laughing, and they are dancing. The last one I have is conclusion. But before that, I want to thank the rabbi who helped me and my brother. And I want to thank Mike Cooperman, who a lot of times when my brother and I were trying to figure this out, we were like, man, I wish Mom and Dad were here. And then we're like, oh, right. And Mike really helped us, so thank you. And also, I need to say thank you to my brother. Because for both my mom and my dad, we would have been here a lot sooner if it wasn't for him. So thank you. Conclusion. Relationships are complicated, but I don't know that my relationship with my father was that complicated. I just wanted him to be proud of me. It's that simple, really. I just wanted him to be proud of me. And it wasn't until after the meeting with the rabbi last night, as I listened to everyone talking about my father, that I understood why I wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted him to be proud of me because I was so proud of him. Because I was so proud of him. Everything he's done, everything he's accomplished, what he taught me, what he showed me, what he shared with me, what he gave me, all of it. In short, my father was a good man, a really good man. And I am so incredibly lucky to have been his son. And even luckier to have had him as a father. That's it.
that moment in the film on the little raft really kind of captures so much about your dad. When the engine doesn't start, you paddle. There was no quit in him. Apparently, at some point in his early life, Michael took an aptitude test, and it indicated that the best thing for him to do was to become a farmer. I mean, things really could have worked out for him. But maybe it was that character trait of tenacity, the way that a farmer, the way that he gardened in that yard, and the way that a farmer wrestles the earth, and sometimes the earth is fertile and sometimes it's fallow, but the farmer doesn't give up either way and demands, give me life. And for all of the challenges that he may have faced throughout his life from early days, he wrestled with it and demanded, give me life. And the results were, Ben, in your words last night, you said, my dad was as good of a man as I've ever known. And a little more succinctly, Judah, the way you put it, you said that your grandpa was a super great person. Enough said. I'll ask everyone to please rise for El Malei Rachamim, our memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmat Michael Ben Bel, Shehalach Le'olamo, Ba'al Harachamim, Yastirehu Beseter Knafav, Le'olamim, Veitzror Bitzror HaChaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, Ve'anuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Michael Stein, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and in the shadow of your wings. And let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
I think we're going to. The rabbis got this.
In just a few minutes, the family will be proceeding to Glendale Cemetery for interment, for burial. And traditionally, everyone who comes should please come. The core mitzvah is Halvayat Tamet, to accompany the dead for burial. And if you're able to, please do. However, I want to just give everyone the pass who needs it. Only those who are fit and equipped to be out in the bitter cold this morning should come. And we will accept the intention of the mitzvah if you need to stay here. Otherwise, those who go and those who want to stay, there will be a meal of consolation back here shortly after burial at Glendale. Okay? So if you are fit and equipped to deal with the cold, please join, turn on your flashers and join the procession. If not, please stay here and join the family for the meal.